All right, give me 1 second. Alrighty then, we are now live on Periscope, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Go ahead and fast forward to 90 seconds, give or take, when the show will actually start, in case you're watching on replay. That's what I meant to say. If you're watching on replay, go ahead and fast forward to the 90-second mark. I know. That was my bad. I'm doing something different, and I actually like it a lot. And so I was like triple checking that this is what I wanted to do. Checking in. What's up, brother? Yo. We will start up in about 1 minute. I'm really excited here. I am so stoked to have this lottery, excuse me, to have the draft done, like, up. I can't wait. I just want to know. I just want to know. I mean, I think we all know. Right? We all know. We know the Suns are getting DeAndre. But I just want to know. I want to see his name. I want to see him put on the hat. I want to see him walk down the court. I want to see him shake hands, do something with my hair. I'm growing it out. You will see it is lengthening intentionally. So nothing really terribly different, but I am growing it out on purpose. It's a summer experiment. So, you know, that's it. So, what's going on, brother? We're going to start in about 10 seconds. About 10 seconds. Just get a couple other things up real quick. Who did think the biggest draft bust? Ooh, I'll tell you what, I'll open with that. Welcome to Valley of the Suns Live, the weekly edition. My name is Adam Ains. I'm your host. I'm your site editor, and I'm your friend of the sun. Hippie Limbo. Oh, hippie. I see. No. It's not going to be terribly long. But I'm trying something different. So, who do I think the biggest bust ever is? So, that's a great question. Anthony Bennett is probably the safe bet. It's hard to blame Greg Oden just because of injuries. I mean, it's kind of the same with Sam Bowie. Sam Bowie, let me see if I can get his college stats up real quick. Sam Bowie was a tremendous college center, and obviously, at that time, centers were a much bigger deal than they are now, especially kind of like the prodding types. Kwame Brown, yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's see. So Sam Bowie, 10 point. Let's see. His final year, he missed a couple years because of injury in college too. His junior year, his third year was 10.5 points, 9.2 boards, 2 blocks. But his sophomore season was 18 points, 9 boards, and 3 blocks a game. It's just Hakeem Olajuwon had to go number 1. Sam Bowie had to go number 2. Oh, it was a lot worse because Katie was like right after him. What's up, Kurt? Well, that's true. I mean, and again, there are some extraneous circumstances that you just can't really avoid. And you can't really, I suppose, blame. Let me pull up Kwame Brown. Let's see. I don't know if Fultz has been on a bust. Well, we got to see. Again, injuries. It's hard to blame a guy. It's hard to call a guy a bust when he's been injured. It's Anthony Bennett wasn't injured. He just sucked. Kwame Brown though, his rookie year, 4.5 points. He only started 3 games. 4.5 points, 3.5 boards, 0.7 assists. Michael Olowokandi. Yeah, let me see though. College. Oh, that's right. We don't have any college stats on Kwame. Duh. What am I thinking? There isn't gonna be anything. I can't call for unless you realize what. And again, that's the thing. And so that's why, Ayton or Doncic, whoever the Suns take number 1 overall, they're gonna have a good 3 years of opportunity to avoid the bust moniker, even if they start out slowly. Let's just say next year the Suns do draft Ayton, and he averages, maybe he doesn't supplant Tyson Chandler. He averages 10 points a game, maybe, it's 4 or 5 boards. I mean, that would be incredibly disappointing. But then it'd be like, all right, kind of like Alex Lamb, you got to give him another year. Even if Fultz did play, he wasn't terrible. No, yeah, that's the thing. Fultz was not terrible. Kwame Brown, though, I mean, he was terrible. 4.5 points, 3.5 boards, like I said. I mean, his career year was his 3rd year. He started 57 games. He averaged 11 points, 7.5 boards. And at that point, he's 21. You're kind of thinking, all right, if you're a Washington Wizards fan, you're like, all right, 4.5 points rookie year, 7.5 points sophomore year, and then 11 points. But then injuries obviously took a toll. His 4th year, he only played 42 games. He really just could never start. I mean, the guy was just terrible. to quote Barkley. But Sam Bowie though, it's just like he had that injury, and then let me get his pro stats up. And he was kind of that generational prototypical center. I mean, it's like what's kind of what you wanted. And at least he came in the NBA and averaged double digits right away. 10 points. He started 62 games, but 10 points and basically nine boards, but 3 blocks. I mean, 2.7. So it's like he was doing what you kind of wanted. Didn't Fultz get a triple double in his third game? Something to that effect. Yeah, it was very quick. And again, Sam Bowie, 12 points his sophomore year, but again, only 38 games, and then 5 games, and then did not play his 4th year because of injury, and only 20 games because of his 5th year. But then he comes back in his first year with the Nets, which he was 28, which was technically his 6th year in the league. 14.7 points, 10.1 boards, 2 blocks. I mean, injuries just did it. Wiggins, now you have to really set people. Yeah, not only that, but Andrew Wiggins, I mean, he obviously got enough. He's good enough to have deserved that, or at least earned that max contract. Plus, he averaged 20. Yeah, I mean, before this season, he averaged 23 points. After the Simmons worked out the Suns, any thoughts? I think it'd be cool if they traded like into the high 20s. But I wouldn't take him to 16. I still want them to trade 16 up. I say we try to get the 2nd pick, throw out a bunch of picks, Sam Ryan, TJ, and Benedict. I would love to do that. I'd love to go after Luka. I would absolutely love to go after Luka. Actually, I'm going to try something real quick. Just because I was supposed to have a guess. I'm trying to see. It'll ring. Nope, it won't ring. I don't know. Someone says Wiggins had to. Yeah. Oh, somebody was saying Wiggins disagreed. Yeah, I mean, again, his sophomore year, 20.7 points, and then 2 years ago, 23.6. And he's missed 1 game. He started every game he's played, and he's missed 1. I mean, he's good, but there's so much hype around him to be the next star. We had to draft Dayton and Javon Carter. Oh, you can get Carter at 31. Luka, Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, Aaron Gordon, DeAndre Ayton. Oh yeah, I mean, if you could trade to get, if you could trade up to get Luka Doncic, you draft DeAndre Ayton first. You trade up to get Luka Doncic second. You then got to move Tyson Chandler, Jarrett Dudley's contracts to probably even Brandon Knight to make a run that an Aaron Gordon. But that would be a hell of a starting lineup. I'd be curious what their depth is, though. Ayton, Graham, Giello, yeah. Carter got to be like 35 years old. I don't know, he doesn't. What is he? 22. 22, right? Hold on. And how old? What is his birthday? Oh, Basketball Reference doesn't have his birthday. That's weird. Let me see something. I think it's only 22, right? Milton. I mean, yeah, that'd be really cool. You guys know who you guys all know who I want. I want Grayson Allen. Give me Grayson Allen, number 31. Let's see. How old is Javon? This is why I wish I had a producer. Carter just looks mad old. He does. He's only 22. But that's the thing. He'll be 23 when the season starts. But I mean, that's okay. I mean, if you're getting him with the 31st overall pick, he's young. He's older than Booker, but I mean, not by much. So I mean, it's not too big a deal. By the way, we're about 10 minutes in. So go ahead and please like, please retweet. Boy, what about him? I don't know much about. Let's see. Yeah, what did you okay? Yeah, at 59, sure. I kind of just want them to trade the pick. Honestly, or get a draft and stash. Great defender. I'm pulling up his stats right now. Dante. Let's see, 6'5". So, okay, so it's a swing. So he'd be backing up Booker. Have you been looking at mock drafts and seeing where he might go? I know it wouldn't happen, but if Jones could get LeBron to come here, would entice. That'd be cool. Draft Ayton, go after DeAndre Jordan and free agency. Then Ayton can play the 4. Happy Memorial Day. 3 more weeks till the draft. Absolutely. He plays the point too. Yeah, but not much. He only started 10 games last year for Villanova, so he's not going to come in and play much here. I don't know. I mean, guys like that, it's like, have you seen 18 and 27? I wouldn't trade up to get him, honestly. If he slipped to 31, I would trade up again for Allen. What's his name? Yes. I think so. Booker, check him out. Trust me, I will. Go look at the next Clay. He shot 40% from three this year, 36% from three last year. Again, no starts, though. Not really. Could be the next Clay. I like Devontae Graham 31, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you still have to remember then, too, place point guard. Oops. You still have to remember, too, I mean, at the moment, they not only have Shaq Peterson, but they also have Davin Reed and Troy Daniels. Plus, they're going to be bringing back, Brandon Knight is coming back. So, Clint Capella should be the Suns' number one priority. Even if you get Ayton, I'm okay. Oh, here we go. There we go. Michael, are you there?
Hey, sorry about that. I always have problems with Skype.
Oh, it's all good.
I never use it except to talk to you.
Not a problem. All right, so, everybody, we're now about 10 minutes in. Please heart, please like, please retweet. We got Michael Schwartz on here. You can follow him, if I recall, you are Schwartz SC. What's your Twitter?
Yeah, SCHWARTZ Schwartz Center M.
Schwartz Center M. There we go. We are going to be talking about the number one overall pick. We're going to be talking about Luka Doncic versus DeAndre Ayton, and then DeAndre Ayton / Luka Doncic for Karl Anthony Towns. What kind of the trades would look like? I do want to just bring up to you, Michael. We got a couple people who are talking about Dante, and I'm going to butcher his last name, DiVincenzo.
Yeah, DiVincenzo.
Boy, you sound like an Italian right there. That was.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, can everybody hear Michael? I can get him up. I want to just double check. Can everybody hear Michael now? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Yes. Okay. Perfect. So, do you have any thoughts on, first off, before we go into the number one overall pick? Obviously, that's kind of settled in that it's either Ayton or Doncic. 16 gets a little bit more money. I'd like to ask a question on that, but 31 gets has a lot of interest to it because it's still the first overall pick in the second round. That's really where you start to get some value. A lot of these guys, like Dante D, I'm just going to stick to that. And then, I would love Grayson Allen. A lot of people are saying Javon. Carter. Thank you. So, who are you looking at? Who are you thinking about in that spot yourself?
There's a French point guard, Akobo, who he just recently had a really big game in the French league. I honestly haven't given as much thought as the first one. I think you just pick best available player there. It is a unique spot because it's not a guaranteed contract, but of late the Suns have been using their late second-round picks, guys like Davon Reed, guys like Tyler Ulis, and given them first-round pick style contracts, so you're under team control for 4 years with a couple of non-guaranteed years or team option years at the end. So, yeah, it's a really important spot because you essentially have a late first-round pick.
Yeah.
And this is a deep enough draft that you're going to have a good player there.
Yeah. So you're talking about that French guy. In regards to somebody that, let's take Dante DiVincenzo for a second here.
Yeah.
He started, I'm looking at 12 of 85 games, but he played, starters minutes. He averaged basically 30 minutes a game this past season for Villanova, and shot 40% from three. I mean, if he would have, let's say the Suns, let's take Dante out specifically and ask a more broad question. Let's say that the Suns like somebody post 16 before 31 that they just don't think is going to slip. And we can use just Dante as just that kind of the name. What would it take, do you think, for the Suns to move from 31 up to, say, 20 or 21, maybe without relinquishing their 16th overall pick and moving back? I mean, how might they move up into that?
I mean, I guess it would have to be the Milwaukee pick because that's a pick that you figure is going to convey in about 2 years, maybe in the early 20s. So when you consider the fact that you always pay a premium when you are when you're dealing away a pick from a future draft for something right now, that seems about fair. But to be honest, I don't see them doing that. I'd even be somewhat surprised if they picked a player at 116 and 31. Just with how many young players are on the roster already, one of the youngest teams in the NBA last year, and the fact that McDonough has said that they want to get a little older, they want to bring in some more veterans. So you figure, of course, we'll talk about this in depth later. You're going to keep the number one pick. I feel like is overwhelmingly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I would be very surprised if they used both 16 and 31, or at least I would certainly be surprised if they moved up to add someone else in addition to that.
Yeah. My hope is certainly that they take 16 and move up, that take 16 and 31 and move up, however they need to do that. Obviously a bunch of us have dreams that they can find their way back into the top 10, if not the top 5. Certainly it is what it is. I mean, it's a dream, but, to just be able to have that number of assets, to have 1631 plus the Milwaukee pick, and then potentially Marquise Chris or Dragon Bender, and even if they got desperate, even TJ Warren. I mean, it seems like if there was ever a year for a team to move into the top 5 without having to give up a, top 5 pick to do it, it feels like this would be the year that not only could a team do it, but that the Phoenix Suns could be that team.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely in a good spot just because they have so many assets, whether it's the future pick from Miami, whether it's that Milwaukee pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think their own future first-round picks certainly are on the table if you're looking to make a huge move up. And then, like you say, there's a lot of of varying degrees, young players, as well as some potential expiring contracts in Jared Dudley and Tyson Chandler. So essentially the Suns have the ammo to make any move they want on the chessboard, so to speak.
Certainly. I really wonder, it was just brought up here a moment ago on Periscope. This obviously Ryan McDonough's done this once before. He moved back into the top 10 to draft Marquise Chris. Now, granted, he had, he went from, 13 to 8, if I recall correctly. So, he didn't move up that far. Sacramento didn't slide that far back. But, if you could offer a package, I keep looking at Memphis as being that team that potentially would have, be most interested in moving out of the top 5, just because, at number 4, you're probably not getting anybody that's guaranteed to make an impact this year. They still have their players that, those veteran players, they still think they can make probably a semifinals run next year if everybody's healthy. If you can offer them, 16s, they can still get some young, and then again, just any number of that package, whether it be Marquise Chris, Dragon Bender, TJ Warren, another future first-round pick, your expirings, and Jared Dudley, Tyson Chandler. I kind of feel like Memphis could be that team.
I don't know. That's way too much, though.
No. I just mean
to move from 13 to 8, they gave up another first-round pick plus Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's already one of the best, was one of the best rookies in the NBA last year.
Yeah.
And that's just moving up 5 spots, and that's trading with the Sacramento Kings, who do not have the best reputation about deal-making over the last few years. I think 16 to 4 would be way too much. I think the highest they could get would be to the 7, 8, 9, 10 range.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. You could get to 4, but I bet it would take 3 first-round picks, and not just like the Milwaukee pick, but like your own future unprotected picks, that kind of thing.
Well, okay, so certainly they could, if in that package of 3, you use the 16th pick, then you could use your unprotected pick, and then Miami's unprotected pick.
Right. Now a package of that, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to put those 3 assets on the table, you might be able to move up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that might be the right move.
Well, and that's the thing, is based on McDonough's desire to get a little bit older. Obviously he'd be adding 2 young guys, but he would be kind of creating some space on the roster to continue to add veterans. And, yet at the same time, if he hits a home run with that 4th pick and that guy exceeds that rookie contract, it's kind of just that building of talent cost effectively that then would allow them to then kind of make that one last great free agency signing before obviously Booker's contract is going to go max after next season, and then let's see who is after Chris and Bender in 2 years. Neither of them are likely to be max, but they'll have to get paid. One of them
Right.
on the roster. Some of those contracts will start picking up, and then in 4 years from now, even if you could add two guys this year, and then you've got that cap space. So it just, I think you're right. I mean, this maybe it is the right move, and then it precludes them from needing to draft young again for the next 2, 3, 4 years, kind of thing. I mean,
Right.
certainly young high. So anyway, yeah, it certainly is just a fun conversation. People, it's something we talk about a lot over here. Is how can the Suns get back up there and get a Bamba, get a Young, I mean, a lot of people love Michael Porter Jr. I'm curious, what's your thoughts on Michael?
No, I agree, and I think that just might be the play.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I think getting up to 4 is somewhat unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because Memphis needs that impact young talent as much as anything, and if they could get, I mean, they're going to get an incredible prospect, and you put that guy with Conley and Gasol, and you feel like they can kind of reboot a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't see any package that Memphis could get that would outweigh the possibility of a Jaren Jackson Jr. or a Marvin Bagley or whoever they end up wanting.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's possibilities. Even Cleveland's interesting because we won't know what's going on with LeBron yet. So, depending on who's on the board at that time, if I think that's more the area where once you get to like 7, 8, 9, where there might be somebody who you still have in your top 5 who someone else just doesn't like. Like, for example, if it is 8 and number 1, Trae Young, I think he could be a polarizing player who could be a top 4 or 5 guys on some boards, and might be, if you already have a good point guard, might be someone you're just not interested in.
Yeah.
If you get past the Orlandos of the world, a guy that teams might not want, because you don't want a smallish backcourt, and I'm sure there's going to be some difference of opinion on him overall. So I think he's the kind of guy you could move back up for.
And that would be great. I mean, the excitement that he would bring as a guard, that's anybody that's ever compared to Steph Curry is obviously gonna bring in a certain level of excitement. But I mean, the fact that he is such a prolific shooter and just a good passer. I mean, assist stats are what they are. It means that your teammates made buckets, but it still means that you gave them the ball in a position to score. And for that Oklahoma team, it became difficult, and his assist numbers didn't really sink all that much. It was his personal scoring, but he would be a really cool second name to add to that, to this draft class for the Suns to bring in if they would be able to trade him to get him.
Yeah, no question. And I think that, the defensive questions are what you have to ask yourself. Whether a Trae Young Booker backcourt could ever get it done, especially when you're watching the playoffs and you're seeing all the isolating that's done to get matchups against particular players. And Trae Young, he's always going to be smallish. At best, he becomes a decent team defender. So, I mean, that's the biggest question with him there. But if you just want an exciting offense, yeah, that would be pretty incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at defensive rating in college, 111.9. So,
granted, I mean, he played in the Big 12, where all of those teams were pretty good offensively and didn't play a ton of defense outside of Texas Tech, who was pretty good defensively. So, but yeah, I mean, he's and also he had to do everything for that team on the offensive end, almost to a LeBron level, where he was shooting or passing and he was creating all of their offense. So, I'm sure he took to some degree some plays off defensively.
Sure.
But whereas when he's at the pro level, he certainly won't be the entire offense, depending on the team he goes to. So, but still, yeah, when you look at that's what excites me, what you were talking about, the passing instincts on top of, sure, we know he's got limitless range and the shooting is going to be there. But if he also has those incredible passing instincts on top of that, I just think he's going to be an incredible offensive player.
Yeah.
So I am higher on Trae Young than most.
Yeah. So real quick, we are about 25 minutes in. We're going to take you guys up to basically tip off. We're going to go 6 o'clock, which is the start of Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals.
We're the pregame show.
We are the pregame show. Oh, yeah. You get some Suns talk, and then you get some NBA basketball. It's just too bad it's not Suns basketball. But we'll get there soon enough. Go ahead, you guys. Please heart, please like, please retweet. We're live on Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. So share, send out a text, and go, hey, check out the pregame show for the next 33 minutes, give or take a few seconds. Actually, I do take that back in regards to Trae Young, his assist stats not dropping. They did drop. Yeah, like he did not reach double digits assists in his last 8 games. He hit 9 once, 7 4 times, but
I'm not worried about that.
I wouldn't be either. The same thing happened to Lonzo Ball. You know.
Yeah, and they just started defending him differently. Probably ran out of gas a little bit. But you saw the instincts, the passing instincts that were there. Absolutely. I saw enough of him to really like him. I think you can nitpick these guys a bit too much. And of course, once you start seeing teams a second time in your conference and they have a real scouting report on you, and you see that his team really didn't have a whole lot, that I get it. And he had that terrible shooting slump. But I'm not worried about him.
Yeah, no. I
on that end of the floor. The other end is a different story.
Sure. Let's see. Yeah, he did his steals. He started out in non-conference play stealing the ball like crazy, but it did slump by the end. In fact, let's see, with these stats pull up over his final, how many games? It's 12 games. He averaged 1.3 steals, but over his first, let's do this right here. Oh, hello, aren't you? Basketball Reference, what are you doing here? Anyway, they were much higher. Basketball Reference just kind of crashing me for a second, but yeah, I mean, like his steal stats, I mean, if nothing else outside of just how many points he allowed his opponent to score, his steals dropped tremendously too. But oh, there we go. Now it's wanting to work. All right, I do want to definitely get on the topic of who the Suns take number 1. Again, Basketball Reference is failing me here, so I'm just going to ignore it now. I've had a song stuck in my head for about the last 24 hours. I don't know if you know the song. It's I Believe in a Thing Called Love by the Darkness. Do you know the song?
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
Oh, classic song. If anybody knows this song, this classic. I have it for an extraneous reason in my life, but I could not help but draw a contrast or a comparison to that song and my love of DeAndre Ayton as a number 1 overall pick. You and I have spoke about this multiple times. You are Luka Doncic, number 1 all the way. I'm DeAndre Ayton, number 1 all the way. I can certainly accept an argument for Luka Doncic for sure, but I just look at a guy who at center is compared to some of just the all-time greats. And when you've got a guy like Ayton that is...
Yeah, but just because he's compared,
I know.
I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that.
Certainly, no. That's the thing. Like, is he going to be next to
some of those comparisons, especially defensively, were somewhat bogus.
Yeah, well, sure. And again, I mean, I totally agree. Like, I do not expect him to be the next Hakeem, the next Shaq, the next David Robinson. I mean, certainly, obviously, he could, but Luka Doncic could be the next Magic Johnson. So I mean, it's a matter of just how they actually perform in the league. But I will also say this too very briefly in terms of my bias. I'm also biased because Suns have never had a kind of a franchise center, and even though the league has kind of moved away from that somewhat. I mean, Golden State is obviously and Houston are both supremely successful without kind of true anchor centers. Teams are still taking those guys number 1 when they are available. When you think of, I mean, Embiid slipped to 3, but the Brow was number 1, and Karl Towns is number 1. So I mean, if those guys are there, they take them. Do you have an argument not just for taking Luka Doncic first? Do you have an argument against taking DeAndre Ayton first overall?
Yeah, and now you've actually brought up some of my favorite fallacies about this number 1 pick. So the things that bother me most when we're talking about this discussion, and we both know it's been somewhat ugly there in the Twitter sphere between Suns fans and the great Doncic-Ayton debate.
Yeah.
I do not care that in 50 years of basketball they have not had a dominant center, And I'd even somewhat dispute that because I think Amari played center and he was pretty damn good for a while. So even
Sure.
if he was technically a power forward, he played center for that team and he was an all-star center. They're not defending David Robinson and Hakeem. We don't need to think back to 93, 94, 95 when it would have been really nice to have a center who could actually go toe-to-toe with Hakeem instead of Danny Shays and Joe Klein. It doesn't matter that they didn't have anyone who could guard Shaq. I do not care about the franchise's history of not having an elite center any more than it should matter that this franchise has always had an elite point guard, and that's what Luka Doncic could be. You could just as easily say, oh, he's just going to be the next in line of the Suns' point guard throne, as you can make the, oh, they've never had a center argument. And I also don't like the comparisons thing. I think some of them are a little bit outlandish, especially you think about Hakeem and David Robinson. These guys were all-world defensive players. So in no way is DeAndre Ayton that. Whereas on the flip side, I think, especially with the way the game is, he's going to end up being a better jump shooter than both of those guys. And any center that has played before these last couple of years when centers started to really shoot. So, I mean, that's kind of my grounds for an argument. I only want to look at what they can do for me today in the modern NBA, the franchise history stuff. As you know, I'm a U of A guy. It would be, on one hand, kind of cool to have the first ever U of A guy to go number one, be the first ever number one draft pick by the Suns, but really that doesn't matter at all. All that matters is who is the guy who can best help the Suns get back to the playoffs and ultimately competing for championships and hopefully ultimately winning a championship. So that's kind of my ground rule for this. I'm not anti-Ayton. Again, I'm a U of A guy. I've watched almost every one of his games. My girlfriend can tell you how huge of a fan I actually am of Ayton and how crazy I went after some of his big plays. I just think for the modern game, Luka Doncic is the better prospect.
Well, and that is the prevailing and probably without a doubt the strongest argument against Ayton is strictly that the league seems to have kind of passed up guys like him that have kind of passed those positions up, if you will. I mean, I've talked about a bunch of times the positionless NBA and wanting a guy like Luka and make him have that kind of positionless backcourt with he and Booker, where they're both just kind of in charge of the ball at any one moment. And so that's definitely the argument against Ayton in that sense. So then if the Suns were to take him, though, I mean, is there still not a way to then be able to build around him and utilize him, as you said, as a jump shooter? And he's definitely got some range. I mean, he shot, I think, only 33 threes in college.
Yeah, Sean Miller doesn't have his big men shoot threes.
Yeah.
We saw what happened to Lauri Markkanen this year.
Yeah.
And the records he set as a rookie big man shooter. And again, it's, this gets so polarizing. I think they're both incredible prospects. The Suns are incredibly lucky that they have the number one pick and they're going to get one of these two guys. I just think when you watch the game that we're about to watch in 25 minutes and you think about where would Ayton be in that game, where would Doncic be in that game, and I think Ayton would struggle a bit on some of these switches. And I guess your counter argument would be he'd be able to pound some of these guys down low, but I mean they're playing Capella off the court to some degree.
Yeah.
So I think you need to, sure, he obviously would help if he's as good as everyone hopes he is, but and again, I think he's going to be an awesome prospect, and if the Kings take him, he's going to have an awesome career for them. But to have a 6'8" guy with that kind of feel for the game, that kind of passing skill, that kind of shooting, I know the percentages aren't always there, but I am confident he's going to be a plus shooter. And when you think about what the Suns could do with the Booker, Jackson, Doncic lineup, maybe you do also draft a point guard who can defend point guards. I know, at least to me, that's kind of the biggest question mark with that pairing. How do you defend point guards? You hope Jackson's the answer, but maybe have the three of them and with a point guard on top of that. Teams just aren't going to be able to defend it. It's going to be really unique, and I think that's the Suns' best chance to have two uber elite. You hope Doncic becomes perimeter players with him and Booker. Then on top of that, Jackson. And I just see that being a path to the Suns becoming an elite NBA team, more so than having the big man in Ayton, especially with the defensive concerns.
Is Luka considered a strong defensive guard?
No. And I mean, that's the good counter argument as well. I just think he's going to be more special on offense.
Okay.
There's questions for both of them defensively, without a doubt. From what I've seen, what I've read, Luka can be a smart team defender. He's probably going to guard small forwards, at least at this point of his career.
Yeah, 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah, at 6'8" even.
Yeah.
He's really big for his skill level, but I think that's going to be the big question mark for both of them. What's going to happen on the defensive end? But I just look that what the Suns could build would be more special and more unique on the offensive end with Doncic, whereas they both have defensive question marks.
Now, I had a debate with a really knowledgeable basketball fan yesterday who apparently watches a hell of a lot more Euro League than I do, because he is all for Luka and was just like, getting on me for never actually sitting down to watch a full EuroLeague game. But I've watched plenty of clips. I mean, I've certainly.
Did you at least watch Eurobasket?
I was at work. No, I couldn't.
Luckily I get to watch that at work.
Yeah.
That perk of my job. I mean, that's what really amazed me, and that's when I really first saw Luka. But I mean, he was putting Porzingis in a blender. He was going at the Spanish team with the Gasol brothers, and with other NBA players or similar, like guys like Rudy Fernandez, who have played in the NBA, now a teammate of his with Real Madrid. And he's 18 years old at the time and just showing no fear, and wins the tournament as one of only two creators, along with our old friend Goran Dragic.
Yeah.
And that was just so impressive, because all the best guys from Europe were playing in that tournament, except for the guys who were hurt. And he was on the all-tournament team. He was knifing them apart. And yeah, again, you've got to watch the clips against Porzingis, because that's, you say what you want about European basketball and athleticism, this or that. We're talking about a 7'3" NBA star who's one of the better NBA defenders, and he just had no chance against Doncic. And when I saw that, that's when I was really convinced that that he's for real. Not just for real, but really special.
So, and that leads me into, you've just described many of the players that Doncic has played against in Eurobasket. Traditionally, though, he's playing against European players who are not NBA players, who are not, they've obviously, truthfully, I mean, if they were good enough to play in the NBA, they would. Obviously, Eurobasket, they bring over some of those guys, but for the most part, those teams are still generally non-NBA quality. Is there a comparison to Euro basketball teams and the competition that Luka Doncic was playing against versus that talent in college that DeAndre Ayton was playing against? Is it, is professional European basketball better than NCAA D1 basketball here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, you're playing against pros, and you're playing against guys in their late 20s, early 30s. You're playing against people who really know the game. The athleticism might not be the same at all points, obviously, especially in comparison to the best teams. But I mean, DeAndre Ayton played in a pretty poor Pac-12. I mean, you're an ASU guy, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, you saw the kind of centers that he was going up against.
What
No
centers?
offense, when ASU was playing U of A, you know, and he was just torching those guys. So, you know, like with anything, I'm sure the lower end isn't that good. But if you watch the EuroLeague Final Four, I mean, those are just some of the smartest, toughest, craftiest players in Europe. I know in the one game he was going up against, I think, the Defensive Player of the Year in Europe as a former American college player. So, I mean, you know, it's never going to be a perfect comparison.
Sure.
Nothing compares to the size, speed, strength of the NBA, but I would definitely say it's a step above what DeAndre Ayton saw on a day-to-day basis in college basketball. You know, some exceptions, I'm sure, but hey, I hate what happened to U of A in the NCAA tournament, but he was run off the court by Buffalo, and a bunch of guys who physically didn't belong on the same court as him, quite frankly.
Sure.
You know?
And that's also definitely part of the team basketball thing. I mean, Buffalo was just coached incredibly well, but yeah, it's when I never had opportunity to sit down and watch an entire Eurobasket game, and frankly, I'm not quite sure how excited I would have been to have done it had I, but just knowing. Or excuse me, not just knowing, but I mean, just in my mind, when I'm trying to kind of rectify the kind of talent that the two players are playing against, I wonder if the European talent, those teams, those rosters who are generally older, more veteran, that's how European basketball is apparently played, where the younger kids, no matter how good they are, they tend to sit, for the veteran players.
Unless you're Luka Doncic.
Unless you're Luka Doncic, yeah. I mean, there's certainly those definite exceptions. But it's just overall. I mean, it makes me wonder if the athleticism, excuse me, that he ran up against, the talent that he ran up against, if it's a little watered down. And
but again, go watch what he did to Porzingis. You know,
sure, I will definitely.
You can say that all you want, but then you go and see what he did against the best teams and against actual NBA players, and that's where I'm convinced that argument doesn't hold weight. And then you just look at, look at his resume, and if he's the MVP of the league, Finals MVP, he's not just holding his own against these people much older than him. He's winning every award.
Yeah. I'm curious. Did you watch the championship game?
I watched the semifinal game. I saw parts of the championship game.
Okay. Semifinals, I mean, put up he had a triple-double, 17 points, 10 assists, 10 boards, 1 steal. The championship game, if I recall correctly, I saw that they were down in the first half and they had to come back to win. But 4 points, 4 assists, 2 boards, and 3 steals. So I am curious what happened. Like his game score.
I think he had a better stat line than that.
Am I looking at the right one?
Let me see.
That was how long? Yeah, it says May 12th. Is that just? Oh, I wonder if these are just regular.
No, it wasn't May 12th.
Oh, you know what? Okay. Then I wonder if these are just regular season stats. Let's see if this is it. Oh, May 20th. Okay, here we go. Okay, so yeah. I think I got it. That's Ulker Fenderbach. Is that who they play? Fenerbahce. Okay, yeah. Okay, so championship game. So 15 points, 4 assists, 3 boards.
Yeah.
1 block, 1 steal. Okay. So
I
wonder about that. I wonder if that. Oh, the other one, I guess. Did they mix leagues? That's weird.
Well, it's complicated. You're playing in in the Euro League and then also in the Spanish ACB League. So the Spanish League still isn't over. Euro League just had its finals, like you said, a week or so ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just kind of like how soccer is. They're always playing in different leagues.
Yeah. That is interesting.
And that's why he won't be at the draft and why he won't be working out, because his season isn't over.
He has announced, though, correct? I mean, he's...
No, he hasn't. The guys at work give me a hard time about that. I would say there is no chance he
Doesn't.
doesn't, especially if he's the number one pick. I mean, there's even still just thinking about the money he'd make in the first year and also starting the clock toward making the real money once you become a restricted free agent in 4 years. I think there's almost no chance that he doesn't come out. But if he's the number one pick, I would say there's really no chance that he doesn't come out.
I mean, I was supposed even number 2, he'd get a play for Vlade and Peja and play with Bogdan. I mean, I feel like there'd be some sort of enticement there as well. I mean,
No, I think exactly. I mean, I feel like it was one of those things. The analogy I keep making. You wouldn't expect if Duke was in the Final Four for Marvin Bagley to be talking about how he can't wait to enter
Sure.
the NBA draft the weekend before the Final Four. I think out of respect for his team in Real Madrid and what they were fighting for, he didn't do that. But it seems to be a mere formality, to me at least at this point. The other interesting thing that we haven't brought up yet is, of course, who his coach was for Slovenia, Igor Kokoshkov.
yeah.
You know, of all the coaches that the Suns could have hired, and I don't think they hired him specifically for Doncic,
No.
but because they did get the number one pick, because hell, we all know how close it could have been to falling to number 4 since we were all so worried about that.
Yeah.
Since the Suns did get the number one pick and can do this, we know for a fact that Igor knows him, loves him, thinks he's a future NBA star, and most importantly, knows how to use him.
Mm-hmm.
So with some coaches, you might be worried about what the transition would be like, especially going from this megastar in Europe and not knowing, you know, how he might adjust to the game. But with the way Igor coaches, knowing the kind of system they ran, and just that, you know, they genuinely, there's a mutual respect between the two of them. You know, Luka reacted positively on social media to Igor's hiring, you know, irrespective of the Suns' pick, but just because, you know, they're close. So I really think that that's another factor, which again, they're not going to draft him just because of their coach who they hired a couple weeks ago, but it only makes sense for the kind of creative system that Igor is going to want to run to pick his guy, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, first off, I completely agree. They didn't hire him with any expectation of who they're going to draft, just because they didn't know who they were going to draft.
Right.
Or, excuse me, they didn't know where they were going to draft.
They didn't know where.
Yeah, because if they slipped up 4, they were never going to get Luka. I mean, or Aiden for that matter. I mean, they were probably looking at Bamba or Jackson there, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that being said, though, if the Suns did go Luka, that would kind of, I think that would change most people's perspective. Let's say that the Suns on what they're going to do this summer. Let's say the Suns did go Luka. There is not a kind of a big man available, at least in unrestricted free agency, that might actually kind of fill out the roster as much as if you drafted Ayton, you still have Brandon Knight. You know, you could still maybe trade up and get a serviceable. I mean, you could trade up. You
still have Tyson Chandler and Allen Williams.
Well,
and you still have Marquise Chris and Dragan Bender, who might be able to play there for times, especially now we live in a world where PJ Tucker is a center.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, obviously Tyson Chandler's here one more year. Allen Williams, I mean, I would love to see what he can do if he comes back. Not if, but presuming they bring him back. That is, I mean, obviously his contract is
right. He might, yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you don't acquire a center, you're going to bring him back. You know.
Yeah. But he is not a long-term solution. Like I can't imagine that after this contract is up, and if they're not looking at him to be kind of a starter for the future. So they would have to kind of go find that guy, and maybe it doesn't have to happen this year again. There's no unrestricted free agents out there really that are, you know, going to be.
I mean, Boogie would be the one, but I agree that's not happening.
No. As that I feel awful with that kid just because Achilles injuries. I mean, that's something that could literally destroy his career.
Yep.
So it sucks because last year I was all aboard trading for and then re-signing, and then that injury happened, and then But
you know what? I just don't think the center position matters as much anymore. You
but
know,
you still
it's
need some
just
size, though. I mean, you still got to be able to. And
you,
I'm talking long term.
sure. But you know, there's ways. You know, like again, I really think Bender and or Chris could be fives, especially in this new NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they both need to improve their rebounding quite a bit for that to happen. Because yeah, you do need size.
Yeah.
But again, we keep talking. You've got some of that money. You can make trades, and I certainly expect the Suns to make some sort of trade that comes out of left field. And then, like we keep talking about, you have 16, you have 31, you have the ability to maneuver, and it's not it's you know maybe center is what you prioritize next year in the draft. You know you still do have Tyson Chandler this year, Williams this year. So I mean, I would honestly be okay with the center position if they added absolutely nobody. And you go in with Chandler, Williams, and then some minutes for Bender and Chris, assuming a Doncic lineup where you might go with the three of them, Booker, Doncic, Jackson, along with a point guard, and you know, just not have a ton of minutes at the four, especially with, you know, and TJ Warren, you know, we haven't talked about. I know he might not be the best fit for Igor, so maybe you end up trading him for a center somewhere. So I'm not worried. You know, we've talked about this before. I am against positions. I think they put labels on people, and I think in the new NBA, they really don't matter. Again, I'll keep pointing to the game that's starting in 7 minutes. None of them really have positions. You have some guys who are offense creators, such as Harden and Paul and Gordon, but which one of them is the point guard? Well, kind of all of them and kind of none of them.
Yeah.
Who's the center? Well, kind of nobody. If PJ Tucker's playing center, you know, I guess when Capella's playing center, they have a center. How about the Warriors? Who's what position in the Hamptons 5 lineup? Well, who knows? It doesn't really matter. So for me, it's about getting the most skilled basketball players on the court with the shooting, with the ability to defend what old school might say many positions, I might say many different kinds of players, where you can kind of switch and be versatile offensively and defensively. I guess that's the bottom line of what I would be looking for in building a team, and what I think the Rockets and the Warriors have done. They're both incredibly versatile lineups offensively and defensively, with especially with your Arizas and Tuckers when you get to the role players, and obviously Iguodala. Not that he's a role player, but Draymond Green might be one of the more versatile players in the league. So I'm trying to emulate that in a Phoenix Suns style. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different with the personnel they already have in place, but
Sure.
That's the kind of guys I want, and that's why I want Luka, because Luka would fit in this game. You know, you could drop him into the 2018 West Finals, you know, especially once he's got a couple of years of experience under his belt, and he would thrive in that kind of a game, you know. So that's why I really see him as generational for what the league is, what it's become. And again, you have the opportunity to have a lineup where, depending on how much Booker grows, everybody is 6'7", 6'8". Everybody can handle the ball. Everybody can shoot. And I think that's the kind of lineup, especially with a creative coach like Igor, that the Suns should want to be building. And then you filled in from there, you know, with maybe you'll need maybe a defensive point guard. You'll need at some point another, you would call this center, I would call it somebody who can defend and rebound, who is tall. And, you know, there's ways to get that with, again, what we were talking about at the top of this. Just how many assets, how the Suns really have, they've got expiring contracts, they've got draft picks and several drafts coming up. You know, they've got picks at every part of this draft. They've got a young player who just signed an extension in TJ Warren. You know, they're at a point where they absolutely have some positions of need. They absolutely need more shooting. They, at some point, will need another big man and probably someone to guard point guards. But I think they're at such a unique spot that I think Doncic would just be the perfect fit for there. So that's where I keep coming back to. If it is Ayton, again, I'm a U of A guy. I love Ayton. I was rooting for him every step of the way, and I do think he's an incredible talent. And, depending on how the development goes, defensively in particular, and then whether he does, how good of a three-point shooter he becomes, which I am optimistic that he'll be a pretty good three-point shooter, will determine how good he is. But it's a great decision because they have two incredible players. I just think the ceiling is higher with the Luka team.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 minutes until 6 o'clock. Does anybody want to shoot us some just rapid fire? Anybody have any rapid fire questions? I do want to ask you, Michael, who's going to win tonight?
I'm going Warriors. I mean, they're the best team in basketball. They're going to win the title again. And I'm actually pretty surprised that it's taken this long. The bottom line is they're not good in crunch time, but I don't think, especially with Chris Paul out, that this game's even going to go to crunch time. So
yeah.
I like the Warriors by 8 to 12 points.
Oh gosh, I'm thinking Warriors by 20 plus. Honestly,
oh boy, I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
Yeah,
just with the crowd and everything, and
the crowd. No Chris Paul. James Harden has just had a horrible series, and I'm just, I was really, really, really hoping for a rematch of the 1986 NBA Finals, but I guess we're not going to get that.
No, we definitely aren't getting that.
Yeah. But by the way, I mean, how hell of a run by Boston.
Yep.
Truly,
and they're set up. I mean, I talk about how great the Suns are set up. I mean, it's that on steroids times quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just with, I think they have up to 4 first-round picks next year, including Memphis's unprotected pick.
Yeah.
Excuse me, not Memphis. I mean Sacramento, which is just top 1 protected, and then they have a top 8 protected from Memphis. So, and then they already have an incredible lineup. So they're several steps ahead of what I want the Suns to become. But yeah, they're.
Suns should have never let Danny Ainge go.
What?
Suns should have never let Danny Ainge go.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, real quick. Well, I got one question that came for you. Who do you think? And we will be off here in about a minute or so. Who do you think the Suns should go after in free agency or trade? Do you have any names?
Yeah, I mean, the number one target to me continues to be Clint Capella, which I know is somewhat ironic after I just bashed the center position for 20 minutes.
To say,
but he's such a unique player. I think he's the perfect center for today because he's an awesome shot blocker, awesome rim defender. And then he's a great dive man, and any pick and roll attack, which is basically what the entire NBA is now, needs that great roll man to open up defense. So if the Suns do pick Doncic and get some more shooting, a guy like Capella would just be the perfect anchor for the defense. So he's my number one target. I don't know how realistic he is because I don't think the Rockets are going to let him go almost no matter what. I think they'd almost match a max offer sheet, but he's by far my favorite target in free agency.
Yep. Do you think LeBron leaves Cleveland?
I do. I don't think he goes to Houston because it would just be too complicated for him to get there, just where their money is, assuming they bring back Chris Paul and have some semblance of the current team. So I think it's either Philly or the Lakers. This Cavs, every time LeBron leaves a team, it's when they just aren't that good anymore outside of him, and the Cavs have definitely hit that point.
Oh, yeah.
So he always goes to his best situation. I think that best situation is Philly, but wouldn't be surprised either if he would be able to bring another max free agent if he decides to team up with Paul George and go to the Lakers, and especially if they trade some of their young guys to get a third star that's a little bit older that LeBron would want to play with. So I think it's either Philly or the Lakers.
Could he do that in Phoenix?
It's interesting. I'm naturally higher on the Suns than other people are, but the James Jones factor is completely underrated. We know how close they were as teammates.
Oh, yeah.
Going to all those finals together. So I think that he will at least give them a chance to have a conversation. And depending on the other moves the Suns make, if they're willing to really cash in their chips, I think they'd have at least a legit argument for why he should come here. Now it's hard to see him go to the team that had the worst record in the NBA, but if he truly believes in Booker and whoever else, I think it's, at least in theory, a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't find it too realistic, but I see, you could see the James Jones making enough of a pitch, and you do think about, well, what if you did put LeBron James on this team, and let's say you did pick Ayton in that case, since that would be a lot of ball handlers if you had LeBron and Doncic. So yeah, I mean that it sounds interesting on paper. It just seems hard. It just seems far fetched.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's an NBA 2K kind of
scenario. But like, would you think about it this way? Take them off the Cavs. Is the Suns roster with the number 1 pick and the number 16 pick, and maybe with, I'm sure if they had LeBron, they would make some other huge move. Is that better than the Cavs now? Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
You'd have a co-star with Booker who could take the pressure off him. In theory, but no, especially with the Suns Rich Paul relationship being somewhat cool.
Somewhat cool, yeah. All right. Well, we got some basketball to watch. I'm sure tip-off is any moment. So I do want to say thank you to Michael Schwartz. You are so much fun to talk to. I have a blast. We had a bunch of people on. I'm so happy. I hope everybody out there is enjoying their Memorial Day, being safe, eating a lot, and getting ready to watch Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. We were basically a pregame show. Valley of the Suns Live was your Game 7 pregame show. So I will be back 1 week from today, and then I will be announcing on Monday where and how I will be doing the NBA draft show. I will be doing a live show on remote here in Glendale, Arizona. So if you're in town, you're more than welcome to come out and join us. I'm hoping to actually get together a whole bunch of people. We're going to have a bunch of people to come on and talk. Number 1 overall pick, then we will take you up through the 16th overall pick, depending on what the Suns do. If they trade up, then we'll just stop at the end of the lottery. But anyway, thank you very much. I will see you in a week. Go Suns. Peace. How do I end YouTube?